The question is, should you use a decoy? And I say, why not?
There was a time when the only decoys used by hunters were for waterfowl. All that has changed with the introduction of big game decoys some years ago. Now, whitetail decoys have become a very realistic part of the equation for attracting deer, especially during bow season.
Decoys are like eye candy for bucks. It gives that final confirmation that's what he's hearing is real when he sees that decoy.
Calls, decoys, rattling, any way of bringing a deer closer to you, it really depends on the region.
To achieve max effectiveness with decoy use, there better be a plan. It's not just going out there and doing something random.
This is Land of Whitetail TV.
You can use a decoy all season long. Here's the basics just for an all season usage plan. Early season, probably go with a buck. A buck decoy on a field where some other bucks might be coming out can instigate a socialization behavior. Deer will come over to it, maybe try to sniff it, maybe try to fight it, maybe set the pecking order. But it can bring deer that are hanging out on the other side of the food plot right into bow range.
You know, if a buck's across the field from you or across an open area, it gives you that visual magnet to draw him in.
It's meant to suck other deer in for social reasons or breeding or fighting reasons.
And it really depends on how pressured those deer are. Deer that are unpressured are going to be way more susceptible to calls, decoys, rattling, and those types of tactics.
The real big time period to use the decoy, yeah, it's the rut. A buck decoy early in the rut, the pre-rut, and during the breeding part of the rut can instigate behavior that is off the charts crazy.
I like to use a standing buck with a bedded doe. Because the image I'm trying to send is here's an estrus doe, here's about a 120-inch buck. Mr. 130, Mr. 140, Mr. 150, please come over here. All you got to do is kick this buck's butt, and there's your doe gift wrap for you right there.
Now, as the rut begins to wind down, the third period to use is the post-rut. And then you probably want to switch to a doe decoy. A buck will come in late in that time period and try to scent and see if that doe is still in estrus to breed her. So you want the doe pretty much broadside, and so the wind is flowing over the doe's back, so the buck comes in from behind it. That broadside approach will give you a straight-on shot into a buck's vitals.
What really helps to sell the lie: appropriate scent usage. Special golden estrus on the doe decoys, megatarsal plus on the buck decoys.
Now, does it matter if you have a buck decoy and doe scent or a doe decoy and buck scent? I personally don't think so. I've never seen a whole lot of behavior change just because of the scent placed out there. The situation you're trying to set up is that there are deer in the area.
And vocalization. Go ahead and do a little bit of grunting to say, I got a doe here.
If you're rattling, if you're calling deer, they're going to come in, they're going to look around, and they're going to expect to see another deer. And that's where decoys come in. They just provide that one other element, this time a visual element, that tells them that what they heard is real. There's a deer there, there's a buck there, or a doe there, and they're going to come check it out.
Check out how Mark Kaiser puts these tactics to use on a hunt in Iowa when Deer and Deer Hunting TV returns. Land of Whitetail is brought to you by Cuddyback, more deer, fewer blanks. Analogics, protect your herd with the power of science. Thompson Center, America's master gunmakers. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. And by Scent Killer Gold with Hunt Dry technology. Apply, dry it, and go hunt.
When you think about big whitetails, what state or province comes to mind? Well, Saskatchewan, Illinois, Kansas, but really Iowa. Isn't that one of the key states where you all would love to go?
Hunting Iowa, why is it so good? Well, first of all, it's the Midwest. Big whitetails the Midwest is known for big whitetails, but why Iowa stands out other than like Illinois and some of the other states that are surrounding us is the management. Our DNR is kind of a step ahead of everybody. It's really hard for non-residents to draw a tag. It takes 4 years to bow hunt. And it's expensive. The tags are expensive and it's a real limited draw. So what that does is it allows us to get an age structure and just get less pressure on our deer.
The next day we were up in a tree, sitting, waiting. We had the decoy out. That's a tactic I truly love, is putting that decoy out.
Well, I'm a big fan of a decoy. 6 out of 8 bucks that come in are gonna challenge it, at least posture up to that decoy.
When the bucks see those decoys, there is no mistaking you're going to get a shot. They are so distracted, so enthralled, just so wound up about that decoy, they never even look up, and that's what I like. I like to have a lot of flexibility in case I gotta move, in case I gotta bend, all that different things during the hunt. And that decoy helps you get by with all the little intricacies of making a perfect shot. It's the pre-rut, and that's a perfect time to use a decoy. Now, if you've seen me on TV before or read any of my articles, you know that I like my decoy to be close because I don't want the deer to circle too far out and around the decoy. What you're seeing here on this decoy is it's a little further away than I would set it up, but there's a reason for that. Now, when I come into this spot yesterday with Aaron Volkmar of Tales of the Hunt Outfitters, he suggested we put that decoy out on the corn edge, and it makes perfect sense. The deer are coming up that and down that edge, and we have a trail beside me where they could come right under me here. If they come up that edge, they're going to run into that decoy as a roadblock, and they're probably going to try to either get downwind or around it. Well, they're not going to go out into the corn to get around it. They're going to skirt in here, and as they skirt in between me and the decoy, they're going to keep their eyes on the decoy away from me, giving me broadside shooting. Well, in theory, you know, that's the old whiteboard plan if you were in an NFL locker room. That decoy there, we're hoping, is going to give us the shot without any buck looking back up this tree. And there was an Iowa giant, what I'd come to Iowa for. But at the moment I was wrapped up in a sleeping bag, sitting crossways in the crotch of a tree with my bow up on a hanger and no way to shoot this dude who's standing right there looking at my decoy. Broadside, perfect. I stood up slowly, unzipped my heater bodysuit, turned 180 degrees in the stand to look towards the buck, and grabbed my bow. I peeked at him again. He hadn't seen me. He's still locked on the decoy. I said, it's now or never, baby. I just knelt down in the tree stand, drawing simultaneously, and that buck never caught any of that motion. Yes! Gee, this here is why you come to Iowa. You ready? This is Mr. Personality for Mark right here. It hits the Kaiser wow factor. It's one of my biggest bow kills. And again, that's why you come to Iowa. Now you might not shoot that 200-incher, but you know what? When you shoot a buck like this, right there is a Matthews memory from here on out. I challenge you to find a more difficult hunt than an open country whitetail hunt. Doesn't matter if it's in the Great Plains, South Texas, you name it. But whitetails living in the open country, especially this northern breadbasket area, yeah, they're hard to hunt. Despite these challenges, I'm always up to a Great Plains hunt. Why? Well, I grew up here. And so when Chad Schilling and his wife Shonda invited me to hunt with them at Oahe Wings and Walleyes, I had nothing to say but yes.
We focus mainly on the walleye fishing and the pheasant hunting, and then we've thrown in a few deer hunts in the last few years. We strive to keep them real low numbers, no groups, no high pressure.
They partnered up with another gentleman, Tommy Howe, and together they've combined a land mass with over 10,000 acres that are archery-only hunting.
The non-residents, that's the only tag that's allowed here on the east side of the river in South Dakota. So we do exclusively archery hunts for the non-resident. And on the wounded vet hunts, we're going to be able to do some rifle hunts as long as they're South Dakota residents.
And the great thing about their properties, well, it has both mule deer and whitetail. So we're just starting to see the beginnings of some of these does possibly coming into estrus. That means you're going to see more midday movement, you're going to see more chasing, you're going to see more of this, just anxious bucks walking around. Sometimes they'll roll right in, sometimes they just ignore you. But regardless, that 1 in the afternoon time period, it's a good time to watch the NFL, but it's an even better time to be out in the deer woods. The reason that buck, even though he wasn't a shooter, came right to this location, it was the decoy. There are many factors that come into play on how you strategize and set out your decoy. The first thing is placement, and I like to keep mine fairly close to my ground line or my tree stand setup. The reason being, the further you set it out, the higher the probability or chances that a deer will swing wise. Once your decoy is positioned where you want it, you'll probably want to spray it down, but make sure it's relatively scent free. Should you add scents? Of course you should. And you can use whatever scent you want to. I really still truly believe an estrus scent is tough to beat. Even though this is a buck, if a buck comes in another one and he smells an estrus doe, he's gonna think that this decoy has a doe locked down somewhere nearby, raising him up even more, getting him more excited. Last, deer during the rut, yeah, they're talkative. They grunt, does bleat, and rattling is going on, fighting. So all these things can come into play with your decoy, so that deer knows this guy here is alive. He may be a little rigid, but that's okay, as long as that buck comes in close, giving you a Matthews close shot. Variety. It's the spice of life, right? Well, that's what we're doing here in South Dakota. We're trying a variety of setups. We're at a different stand. This is our third different stand on this hunt already. Now these deer don't have many places to hide. They got little narrow draws. We're on one of about, I think, 4 different big finger draws.
I don't know, you can take credit for a lot of things that the deer do on their own. I mean, we try to give them sanctuaries, we try to give them big areas where they can live. There's a lot of deer that reach maturity in the area. Biggest key to our success on that is if we have a really quality young 3.5, 4.5-year-old deer, we let him go.
in a pretty much a permanent bale blind here. It's got plywood sides, heavy duty wrap on the frame. This blind isn't going anywhere today, tomorrow, or 2 years, 3 years from now. In whitetails throughout the season, they'll pass by them day and day and day, again and again and again. Fighting some wild winds today. We got winds in excess of 40 miles an hour with gusts to 50. We're in a tight little draw, and what's occurring here is there's a lot of this swirling going around, and he must have got just a whiff of us or something wasn't right. That happened again, not even an hour later, when a jumbo, big, wide 4x4 did the same exact thing. I was a little disappointed because as the night ended, we only saw another young buck or two. But I knew now that that was a cruising area. We just had to put in our time. Hopefully a big buck would come by. The next morning, another great encounter. A buck started coming and he was just like on a string. It wasn't quite what we were looking for. I just decided then, we had seen those bigger bucks. We knew there were bigger bucks around, so I let him walk. And as he walked off, I really thought I did something wrong. I might have passed up my only opportunity. National statistics on archery hunting, maybe 30% in a good area is what you can expect for success. Well, this is a good area. I just was shopping a little too hard, looking for a bruiser of a buck. That's what you'll see at Oahe Wings and Walleye. Big bucks, great country, and some great hospitality.
Land of Whitetail is brought to you by Cuddyback, more deer, fewer blanks. Analogics, protect your herd with the power of science. Thompson Center, America's master gunmakers. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. And by Scent Killer Gold with Hunt Dry technology. Apply, dry it, and go hunt. Growing Big with Steve Bartilla.
When people think about habitat improvement, they think about food plots, and for good reason. Food plots can make a big difference in your success. The problem that most people have, though, is they don't go ahead and match the best food plot locations for their hunting conditions. Okay, instead, they go out to that back corner of that field that's nice and easy to produce a food plot, that opening in the woods, someplace easy. Instead, you have to go ahead and follow certain formulas to get the max production out of your food plots. Before you ever put in a food plot, find your tree stand tree. Find a tree that you can get to safely, get out of safely, and hunt safely. That means that the deer are not seeing you, they are not hearing you, they are not smelling you. You need to factor in wind direction, you need to factor in sight line, you need to factor in where the deer are going to be when you're going back and forth. That does not happen by accident out there in the deer woods. You know, if you go to the back corner of that field and put in that food plot, the odds of being able to do those three things safely are very, very, very low. Instead, you find that location where a food plot will work. It's got good soils. Maybe you have to do a little bit of clearing, but you can get a food plot in that location, and you find the tree. You find the tree that you can access, and then you build your food plot around it. Another good strategy is, do you want a holding plot or do you want a staging plot? Lots of times you don't have to plant the holding plot. The holding plot's purpose is to go ahead and get deer to stay here. This is their destination food source. That takes a lot of acreage, and a lot of times it doesn't make a lot of sense. You've got a neighbor who's got a great big corn and soybean fields. Okay, why do you want to go ahead and put corn and soybeans over on your ground? You're not going to stop them from going over there. And you don't have 20 acres to put into food plots on your 40-acre property. So instead what you do is about 20 yards, 30 yards, 50 yards off that line fence. You go ahead and you create a little opening in the woods. You create a little opening in the woods because Mr. Big, he's not willing to step foot out on that great big egg field during legal shooting lights, but he is willing to step foot out into that quarter-acre, third-acre, half-acre staging plot before going in there. And then you take it a step further. You shape it like an hourglass. You shape it like an hourglass so you got a nice little pinch point in the middle that the deer are going to go through that offers a great easy shot. You put a stand on both sides of those pinch points. Now you've got two different wind directions, and then edge feather around that food plot. Edge feathering is just simply the act of hinge cutting the trees approximately 2/3 of the way through, getting them to fall down and retain that connection to the root system so they continue to grow. Boom, you just shot that browse level up. The regrowth you get, the woody browse, you've increased the draw of that food plot, and you've made them feel even safer yet because now they've got great protective cover around it. You've also opened up the woods more to allow more sunlight to get to that food plot so your food plot can thrive, and then take it one more step further. And that is you leave nice, easy openings within shooting range of those tree stands that you want those deer to go through. You have the path of least resistance on a safe wind area. You slap in a little water hole over there as well, simply by burying a bucket. And now you have that food plot. You've got a food plot that you can get to safely. You've got a food plot that you can hunt with safe winds. You've got a food plot you can leave safely, that deer feel comfortable, that offer them food throughout the entire season.
Be sure to check deer and deer hunting out online and on Facebook.